Greetings and welcome back to Switch to Linux. We are going to have a look at some PFSense today. So first, let's talk about my PFSense build. So one of my viewers wanted to bless me with this wonderful gift of a Fitlit PC, and so it is over there sitting kind of behind the cat. I don't know if you saw it back there or not. It's the same one I had on the thumbnail for the image. So the PFSense is one of these microcomputers. This one happens to have a quad core, and I forget how much RAM I have, and I think there's 8 gigs of RAM in here. And 256 gigabyte hard drive, I believe, is what we have in this. Now, there's a variety of different ones that you can get for different purposes. So the one that I have has 4 Ethernet ports. And with the 4 Ethernet ports on it, basically, that will allow me to have essentially 3 open available ports to do routing through, and that's actually when I just got I got the new network switch. The reason I got that network switch is I was upgrading from a 5-port switch to an 8-port switch because I knew I was going to lose 1 port, and I was already completely maxed out on ports. So now with everything plugged in, I'll still have 1 or 2 available ports, which is good. Basically, I have the Fitlit here. Mine's kind of silver, and if you look at mine, it has a different top, and that's because this top is the traditional top. I have that around there somewhere, but the one I actually have is a big heat sink top, so it will, dissipate a lot more heat out of it. There's, I think there's 3 USB ports on the front. I think there's 2 on the back, and of course, I have my wireless card stuck in the back of one of them. And then, of course, we have our volumes and things. Like, I would love to get another one of these as kind of like a mobile workstation. Because, I mean, the thing's pretty powerful, especially since somebody showed me how to go into the BIOS and open up a little bit more of the processing power. And that really just opened the thing up. And so you can actually buy Linux Mint with these. You can buy one of these from Linux Mint. So it supports the Linux Mint Foundation with Mint pre-installed. So that's actually a cool option as well. So the one that I have, I believe it's the X. Let's have a look. Yep. So this is the one I have. So you can see what all it has here. There is dual HDMI out. There's a COM port back here. Looks like, yeah, 2 USB, like 1, 2, 1, 3 on the back. This is the power port. We have a basic COM port, and this is, of course, one of the Ethernet ports. Then you have three Ethernet ports here, and then 3 more USB on the front, 1, 3, 2, 2. And I believe this is a micro SD card, and then of course we have our volume. So these things here are absolutely amazing computers. And of course you can build it with this extra wireless card, which is the one I have for a router, or you can get it with extra ports, extra stuff. There's a lot of other things that you can put on the side. Basically, this is a PCI slot, basically, in this little computer. So there's a lot of different options that you have for what you can put on the side. And so that is the system that I have. And of course, if you're unfamiliar with PFSense, this is based on FreeBSD. And it is a phone call, apparently. And so from FreeBSD, you can download this and install it, and you can get an entire routers and switches with this thing already pre-installed. And they are doing a little bit different things. I actually had to stop and read a little bit more about what they're doing because they're kind of being a little bit harder about their copywriting and things like that. Kind of like what you can pre-install it on and sell as a product, essentially, is what they're working toward. So that's kind of that. And I see I have a few comments over there, so I'm going to jump over there before we actually dive into the rest. So, all right, so let's go ahead and jump over into my configuration panel. So here is what I have at my configuration. So it'll give me all of my system information here, including the how's the system doing. So right now you can see I'm streaming this guy over here. It's 6% of the CPU's used, 4% of the memory's used. Oh, it jumped up a little bit. 0 swap. So you can see that we're running pretty light. And I have this computer streaming. I have a computer behind me. This computer over here is going. 2 cell phones on the network and an iPad on the network right now. So that's kind of what's going on right this second. And so yeah, it's going pretty good. This is my blocking system. I'm going to show you how to do this. I actually have 94,000 blocking scripts because I've deployed my host file. I have a way now to deploy the host file across this, and it will check for updates every 12 hours and install any updates that I have onto the system every 12 hours. And so nothing on my network will be hit by Bitcoin miners, session replay, or advertisements, except for I'm allowing Google ads through so I can support YouTubers as I'm watching videos and things like that, because Google ads generally, well, they're annoying on the tracking. They are not super intrusive when it comes to running them on a website. And so I've allowed Google ads through so that I can help my fellow YouTube creators watching their videos and see their ads rolling. I have no problem with that at all. But I did block all of the crazy malicious people and all those other guys on there as well. And I'll show you how to do that. You can see my interface here. This is my WAN going out to my modem. And then the LAN consists of the 3 different ports and the wireless port. You'll see that one of these says auto select and has an X. This is actually my printer, which is never plugged in unless I intend to print something. And so that's why that's X'd out there. It's because it's basically reading a dead signal. The other 2, one of these is running to my NAS, and then the other one of these is actually going to my 8-port switch. So all the computers over here are all on the switch. And then, of course, I have the wireless set up. I have the wireless set up as a G network, 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. And now I have the more powerful wireless network. All these crazy people. So that's kind of how my system is set up. So one of the things I found about this is that the configuration, the documentation is not nearly as good. It's kind of like there's this joke. There's this pilot and this helicopter pilot, and there was this student in the cockpit with him, and they're flying through Seattle, and all of a sudden there was a short, and all of their lights and navigation went out in a helicopter, and they're like, oh, what do we do now? And so they get up to this building, and there's this board meeting going on. So they grab a pen and paper, and they hold it up to the window at the board meeting, and it says, "Where am I?" And the people in the conference room take a board, and they hold it up, and they say, "You are in a helicopter building." And 5 minutes later, they were safely on the ground. And the co-pilot looks over to the pilot and says, "How did you know where you were based on that thing?" He says, "Oh, well, I knew that had to be the Microsoft building because only computer engineers could be technically correct and completely useless." And so that's kind of the way the documentation I found is. It's technically correct and it's very useless. It was very hard getting this all set up. I had to figure out most of it. There's some tutorials out there that are okay, but some of it's just not quite as good as you would hope it was. So I'm just going to walk through just a few of the pitfalls that I found and how to solve those. Of course, go through some of the initial setups. There is in the system, I believe you will find a setup wizard. You want to run the setup wizard first, and then that's actually going to allow you to figure out everything else. Oh, by the way, here's the CPU type, by the way. AMD A10 Micro. So it's a 4-core, so you can actually see what the processor is there, so if you were curious about that. And it looks like I've been uptime 5 hours since I put it in its spot. It took over my old Linksys router there. So, all right. So anyway, the next thing that you are going to want to do is you need to get your interfaces set up, and so you have to do your assignments. And so, of course, your WAN, you want to have both of your cards available, and you want to have the system plugged in before you run your auto config, which actually you usually just do through the terminal, or in my case, I just plugged in a monitor to the system since I was just working on it here and there. It was more mobile when it wasn't sitting over there with cables sticking out. And then what you do is you assign which one's the WAN and which one's the LAN. And then you need to make sure that all of your different ports will properly function with that. And so to do that, you actually have to set up a bridge. So your bridge will allow you to choose various options. And by the way, if I wanted to have an alternate network on here, I could actually take my other wireless card here, plug that into the computer over there, and I would actually have another wireless LAN, which I could actually run on a separate gateway. But here, in this case, I wanted everything all on the same gateway, and a lot of the reason is I do all my files sharing through my NAS. My book server is on my NAS. I have a Raspberry Pi, which the iPad and my Android phone can control the Raspberry Pi as long as they're on the network together. And so I wanted to make sure everything is all on the same network. Not to mention I can push all of those scripts. So now when I'm at home, any of my devices are blocked from all of the annoying advertisements that are just kind of beyond annoying. And so to set that up, you want to, first you need to go into each of the interfaces. And inside of each of your interfaces, you want to select, choose which, you need to enable the interface, give it a name. It doesn't really matter what it is as long as you know what it is. And then, just keep the basic configurations. And then once you have all of those interfaces done, you want to come over here to bridges and you want to add a bridge, and then you select what goes into the bridge. So if I actually wanted to run two different gateways, then I could actually have one of the ports on a different gateway than the other ports by creating two bridges. And so I could have maybe the one port that's, not activated right now and a second wireless card on one access, being able to access the internet, call that a guest network. And then I could have everything else go through my personal network. So I could actually do something like that in here. In this case, I just wanted a simple basic router type setup. So I just created a bridge, and then I added the 3 ports plus the wireless port into the bridge, set that into there. Now I'm not going to click into the wireless because that will expose my information, just my network type and passwords and things like that. There's nothing special about that. If you've set up any wireless stuff, you've set that up before. So we're not going to bother with that. So that's actually what you need to do on your interfaces. Then, of course, we have our firewalls. So we have, I have installed the PF Blocker NG. So you want to come over here to Package Manager, and you can install a variety of different packages. So I installed the PF Blocker NG. Now, a lot of people are going to push you towards Squid. Squid is overly complicated for the type of network I needed. If you need to do a whole lot more, maybe you want to have my adults network and my children's network, figure out Squid. In my case, it was more of a hassle than anything else. And actually, I couldn't even really get it to work well. And I was like, I'm not going to bother because there's just too many other things that I could have done with it. But as far as my rules are concerned, you'll see here, this is my Windows 7 Dell computer, which is set up so with my Warcraft port. So when I go kill orcs, I can pass through anything on port 6115 to that computer. Nothing else is going to go through. And then, of course, you'll see this one here is the Raspberry Pi is disabled. And the reason this is disabled is this is what I need. If I take that Pi off of the media center, I plug in my VPN, and I plug my VPN into the system. Then I go in here and I turn on that rule, and then that's going to allow the VPN to work. But as it is right now, I chose to keep that one disabled because if that's enabled, then anybody outside the network could, in theory, SSH into my Raspberry Pi, whatever I'm using it for. And I don't want that to happen. And so I keep that rule disabled unless I intend to set up the VPN. So if I'm going to be out for a couple days working, that's usually what happens when I'll set the VPN when I'm going to be out of the office for a couple days. That way I can still access everything inside. Now, there's another consideration that I did, and you may have noticed it, you may not have. And that is, if you notice, my LAN here is 192.168.5.1. I didn't go with the traditional 0.1 or the 1.1. The reason I did that, so if you're building one of these and you have a VPN to access your network when you're not home, the reason I did that is because most routers are either 192.168.1.1 or 192.168.0.1, which is also what people are like, set this up like that, whatever. But here's the problem. If you set up your router with the same IP system as or the same gateway, whatever, as your home network, then you can't actually get in with the VPN. It will get confused because and I found that out at a friend of mine's house, had a very similar router than mine. So he also had 192.168.1.1 like my home router was. And I could not access anything on my network from if I was on his network at his house. And so by changing that to 5.1, it's going to force my VPN to be a completely different subnet than anything else. And so I will not get lost in other people's home networks. So this is a way that I can access things while being on other people's home networks through the VPN. And so that's one of those things that you want to think about doing. All right, so the next thing is how did I get my block log in here, and what does that look like? Well, let me show you the block log. So you come down here, and then I want to look at DNSBL files, and then of course this is my custom text. It will take a minute to load, so I'm going to have a couple cookies. I hope it's loading. There it is. All right. Let's see. All right, so you can see that it has all of these different entries in it. All of these different entries are the various things that I have put into my script. And looks like it might have done a few things differently there. Let's see. 15, Facebook. I think there's probably more. It looks like it's actually cutting in part way in. It's possibly because of how long the file is, because I actually have in here the Bitcoin miners as well, and all of the things that I have on my basic computer. They are all on this block list, and so basically it's just going in here and disabling all of those. Let me see if there's... Give that a second to run there. Takes a little bit to load some of these screens. There's a lot going on to it. So anyway, let's just go back over here. So I'm using the DNS block log, and so what you do is you create a feed. And so I basically have this script here. It's my custom blocked list, which is simply a script, and you want to pull it in from a website. So I kind of have it loaded at my website there. And what this is going to do is it will have this feed logged in here. So it will look for this feed. You just put the feed in here, and basically it's just my host file. I took a couple things out of it. But you have your host file there. And then you select Unbound as your option here. You know, hit your add to actually add it, and then save your files. And then you need to enable. You want to enable your DNSBL. And then come over here to update. And then you can update the list file here. So this guy's going to update itself every 12 hours. The list is going to update. And then every 12 hours, the cron job's going to run. And what the cron job's going to do is it's going to sync the list up together. So if I just go ahead and click the button there, I'm not going to do it here in case it does anything goofy to the stream. But you just come over here and run it. So this way I was able to simply take my host file that I've been building to and adding to. So it blocks Bitcoin miners that load onto your websites. It blocks session replay from tracking all the things that you're doing. It blocks all those advertising systems. And it will block bad sites on the internet. None of that is accessible anywhere on my network at this point. And then running your cron and things will update it. Of course, you need to make sure you enable it there. This is where you determine your cron. I could probably change this down to once a day. You know, I could probably go ahead and do that because it's not like I'm sitting here updating this on a regular basis. Pretty much, if I know that there's a file I need to update, I'm going to log into this panel and manually do it anyway. But just in case I forget, I'm going to keep it to manually do that. So every 12 hours, it's going to go out, grab a copy of the file, and then I'm going to it's going to run that way. So And that way there, what happens is it will, so here's your inbound rules, outbound rules are your LAN. And then I tested this, I actually tested it on the Solus computer back here because this computer I'm streaming on has all that directly built into the host file. But the Solus computer back here, being as it's a test computer, I don't deploy the host scripts that I have on that computer because I change it so often. So I use this computer as a test, pulling up sites. I verified first what it looks like with the Google services blocked. Indeed, it blocks Google ads. And then I took those out of the script. And by the way, in order to get that out of the script, you need to come into your logs. I just want to see, yeah. You need to come into your logs and you need to grab your files here. And then what you need to do is you need to just literally come in here and delete the file. So when it finally loads, like I said, it's loading a ton of text. That's why it's taking a while. As I said, there's like 29,000 entries in here of things that it's blocking around the world. And that's actually going to greatly save a lot of bandwidth here. We talk about, with this whole net neutrality things going on and they're talking about, ISPs having more control. Oh, they're going to data cap us like there's no tomorrow. Absolutely. And this is a good means that we can block that data capping. So, is it working? There it is. Now it's loading the file. There it goes. Okay, so you can see it's loading the file. So if you just come over here and push delete, that's going to clear it out. And then you need to reload it. So I found out that if you do have to make some changes to your file, you do have to delete it and rebuild the file, which isn't a huge deal. But you can see what all I'm blocking in here. A lot of things I'm blocking. And I think that is... That might be it. I might be wrong on that URL. Yep, I'm wrong on that URL. Let me grab that URL again. STL block, that's it. That's right. 4 hours left until D-Day. Okay, so here's actually that whole file here. You can see I have my Bitcoin miners here, I have my session replay up here, and then a variety of things I've been adding to. So it looks like what it's doing when I come into the logs is not that one. There it goes. It looks like it's kind of displaying starting down here quite a ways, and I'm guessing it's because there's so much in the file. That's my thought. So I could actually test it if I could go to so like if I try and go to clicktail.net on this computer, I know this host file is there, so I get that. I'm going to try it over here though. This one, the Solus computer over here, is set up exclusively based upon what's in the router setup. Okay, so I get the same thing. Unable to connect. Let me move that over so you can see it. So there it is, unable to connect. Same exact message that I was getting over there. So it is all in there. It's just only displaying part of it because, yeah, it's just such a long file. And so there is the script. And so basically I just deployed that on one of my websites, call that script in, and then that's going to automatically do that. Other things I've not explored with yet. Let's see. Oh, you know what? The other things I've done is the DHCP server. Let's see, not that one. There we go. DHCP leases. This is something you might want to do. You'll see that these are all the devices that I currently have on the network. You'll see that, let's see what's offline. My Linux Mint, Dell, and the Raspberry Pi are both offline. The Raspberry Pi is my media center. That's only plugged in when I'm using it. The Linux Mint Dell is on the desk behind me. That is indeed turned off. What you see is at the top, these guys here are the lease clients that it doesn't really matter to me what they are. Of course, my Mac is over here too, and the Mac is also turned off. So these guys here are just, I just let the system automatically define that. These guys down here, I want them on static IPs. And the reason is the Dell computer needs to have a custom rule for access to the Battle.net network, so I lock that in. I think I did a similar thing on the Linux Mint Dell because it's my backup computer. I always want that on the same IP address. Of course, my Raspberry Pi is the open source media center. That has to stay on a static IP address so that my devices can remote control it through the network. And Open Media Vault is my NAS, so that has to be the same one so that my devices know how to actually reach it. And so those are the individual devices. So let me show you how to do that. First thing you need to do is you need to go in and I got to remember where this one is. We have to set up, it might be general. Let's see. No, not general. I don't remember where this part is. What we have to do is we have to set up where our assignments go. And so let me just hunt around and see if I can find it real quick. Might be the server. Yeah, here it is. Okay. And so it's services DHCP server LAN. And then what you want to do is you want to set, enable DHCP, which will dynamically assign IP addresses. And then you want to set a range. So you'll see that my range is from 10 to 100. You don't want to set the whole 255 range because obviously one of those is reserved for the router. And then everything above 101 and above I can set as a static device. And so you want to make sure that your range does not include everything because what you'll notice then is as you go to our leases, you'll notice that all of my assigned leases are greater than 100. So to do that, you'd pick a device. So maybe I want to say, let's just say we'll pick the iPad here. Click there's two pluses. Click the more white plus. It's going to automatically copy the MAC address of the device, and then you want to assign what its IP is. And so let's give this 110. I don't think 110 is being used. So that's called the iPad. So here's iPad. And then that's essentially all you need to do. Everything else you can keep how it is. Hit save, and then you need to hit your apply changes. I don't want to do that because that could reset the router, so I'm not going to apply the changes in case that breaks anything on my stream. And I don't care if that goes anyway. Now, an important point though is that when you are doing that, you want to make sure that you kick the item off the network and then add it back onto the network again because it will maintain that initial lease that it had before, unless you restart it. So if you come over here, you actually have the option, like the Mac Mini here, I have the option to just delete the lease. So I can do that, and then next time the Mac boots up, it will take whichever one it's assigned. And so I did want to do that, and that allowed me to set up my rules. Also in your firewall, go up to your aliases. I have rules set here for IP addresses, and then these names over here can be called by the rules. So you can come in here and set up your rules based on those. There is VPN options. I've not explored those at this point in time. There's some diagnostic things like that. So that's kind of about it. With that, I was able to get the system pretty much working pretty well. So no major problems at this point in time. It does everything I need it to do. It's quite a bit more powerful than the old Linksys router was, especially since this is gigabit and the Linksys router was just a 10100. So hopefully I'll be getting a lot better network speeds on the system now.